Joe, good day and welcome to another episode of the RoadFS Podcast. I am back. It feels good to be back. And Rod
Jody's
kept things
back,
running.
so I got to keep my
pants on.
pants on now because Jody's back. Can't run around the office naked. So
no, but speaking about running around, maybe you need a scooter.
There you go. Speaking of that, our guest today is someone you all should know. If you don't know him, then you're probably hiding under a rock. But Mr. Kevin Halewood, how are you today, sir?
Good, thanks. How are you all?
Doing great.
We're doing great. It's been so fun. Looking forward to visiting with you because Rod and I, we've had a lot of discussions about us starting our company RoadFS, starting our software. And, Mobile Tech Expo was one of those key components, right? And we remember going back in the day, and here's a little throwback picture when we were out in the hall.
That's right.
Yeah, baby.
So that is going back a minute.
Yeah. So the first time that I was at Mobile Tech Expo was 2008.
Right.
So how long has this been going on?
Well, it started back about 2001. In 2000, I had met Tom Price, who actually we had a company and we were manufacturing car door panels. And I also had done interior work and vinyl repair. So when I got to the guys that were doing detailing and all the other aspects for glass repair, and I thought there's got to be something for them. You had SEMA, you had NACE, you had a glass show, there were so many shows, and I went to all of them. And I bumped into Tom Price at the NACE show, and we went for lunch or whatever. We were sitting there having lunch talking, and he said that, be a good idea if you could actually include a PDR contest in it. Well, at that point, I thought it would be a good idea, but I was trying to do something for detailing as well. But detailing was extremely difficult. But there again, we decided to do it. The first show was at the Tupperware Center in Orlando. And Nat Danis, who published Auto Trim News, he came to the show. I was driving him to the show. And as we go down the ramp, it's like grass parking lot in front of the building. And there's 700-800 cars. And I'm like, oh, I can't believe it. This is great. It was dark. It was like early morning. It was dark. And there's a guy with a flashlight down there guiding you where to go. And I'm like, oh, you go, what are you here for? I said, oh, Mobile Tech Expo. And he goes, oh, no, you guys are around the back.
Yeah.
And it was like 14 cars if there was that many. But it turned out to be a really good show. We had about 50 exhibitors, which was pretty good for a first show. And the response was overwhelming. A gentleman by the name of Tom Nations from Dent Wizard, he stopped me in the aisle. I definitely got to talk to you because we want to make sure that we get into the next show. And, we don't want to stop doing the show. It was that good for them. But again, it was the first. And it did take off from there. From there, we went to the Doubletree over by Universal, the Twin Towers. And we had it there for about 4 years. Then we went to, I think it was Texas. And then from Texas, we went back to Orlando. No, I'm sorry, Clearwater. We went to Clearwater for like 4 years.
Yep. That was one of the first ones I went to was in Clearwater. That little pond out there. Yeah. And I remember Jody and I laugh about it because there was a guy that he's really good and he does large dents. And he rented like a black Range Rover and then just kicked the hell out of the side of this car. and everybody that went by there was like, there is no way that dent's coming out. And at the end of the show, he was still trying to pull it out of there. He went a little too far.
Well, I think it was like a BMW or whatever, or a Range Rover. And when he brought it up, and I'm thinking, these guys are good, but I'm not sure. And he decided to do it all on his own. I'm thinking that's going to be real difficult. But at the end of the show, it was drivable. So,
it was definitely drivable. Yeah, for sure. We saw him work on it. But that's the thing is that the early days, like when we were there in Clearwater, that's when we were outside in the hallway because there were so many people that were interested in going and being part of it. And there wasn't enough room inside, and we didn't care. We were in the hall. We did fine. We had people sign up at the show. And it was a good show. And I remember telling Jody at that point, I'm like, well, this is kind of when you gotta just check this one off. Every year you gotta be there because I think the combination of being wintertime and in Florida, the off season for a lot of these guys and gals it's perfect, to be there.
Yeah, exactly. Clearwater was really good, I thought. The first year we were at the Bellevue Biltmore for the host hotel, but then we moved down to the beach after that because the Biltmore was being actually knocked down, which was a shame. But we took it to Texas, and that was I don't know whether you heard about Texas. My best friend's a pilot with Southwest, right? And we have a lot of internationals that come to the show, Germany, England. And so I said, we're doing it down in Corpus Christi because we had gone there to look at it. They took us around and we thought, yeah, this can work. Well, of course, he says to me, well, Corpus Christi is the armpit of Texas. And I'm like, what do you mean? He said, it's not going to be fun. I said, it'll be fun. Well, turns out he didn't tell me that if you're flying in from Europe because of the agreement with American Airlines or whatever they signed with the state, if you're flying in from Texas and you land in Dallas, you can't leave there to get to Corpus Christi. You have to go to Love Field. So you have to transfer over to the other airport. And I said, why don't you tell me? He said, well, I just want to see how you'd work it out.
Oh my God. Wow.
Yeah. Needless to say, he's no longer my best friend.
Wow, that is a nice. Wow. Well, that's one of the things that happened a couple of years ago in the other event that Sheldon and the Convex crew are involved in, the Southern Detailers Conference, where they had it in Lexington, and everybody thought, well, this will be easy. Well, you have to fly into Ohio and then drive to Lexington.
That's right. So, I went to that. I went to the Lexington and then to Louisville. I just went to the Louisville one.
I don't know if people understand the complexities involved, and that's when Jody and I got involved a little bit with the Southern Detailers Conference. Just the complexities of having a vendor tell you've got to book this out a year in advance and put half the money down. People don't realize the amount of money that you're putting up to do this show, basically on a promise. You're like, okay, there were 150 last year, if I can get that many again. So, this has been, I can tell this has been a labor of love. You're there every time. You're always going around making sure everybody's okay and greeting them and everything. And how hard was it for you to kind of step back from that and allow somebody else to kind of take the reins?
Well, it was definitely hard. I think everyone knows I had a severe heart attack in 2005. They didn't expect me to live. I was in intensive care for about 7 weeks. And I had Kara, my daughter, helping me, and that was a big help. Mm-hmm. But I realized that we were limited as to what we could do. With the funds that we had, we were definitely limited.
Yeah.
And it was at that point that I thought, well, if anybody mentioned, I might discuss it with them. So I have a friend, Ellen McCoy, who was with SEMA years ago.
Yeah.
And she mentioned I had met Chuck Schwartz at the SEMA show years ago with my friend Nat Danis. And I thought, wow, this is, he's really a down-to-earth guy. And word I got back, he was very honest and a lot of integrity. And I thought, well, they contacted me and I said, well, I think about it. He then flew into Tampa and we went for lunch. And I thought, yeah, I think I would be happy with it. And again, the reason also was he was more concerned with not just the show, but the people that are coming to the show.
Yeah.
Who's going to attend. And that made a big impression on me.
I think that's an important lesson because I think a lot of times we as business owners or event creators, it's easy to slip into the mindset of what am I building? Mm-hmm. What does my business look like? What does my event look like? Instead of how does my business, how does my event serve the customer, the people that are coming? Right. And I think that's one of the things that, especially early on that I saw that you did a really good job of is creating an opportunity for people like in the PDR Olympics to come in, highlight their skills, to, compete against other people, but also to bring in the detailers and the wheel repair guys and go, all right, guys, this is an industry event. And I'm trying to create an opportunity for you guys to connect, to collaborate, to bounce ideas, to learn from each other so that then you can go back and better serve your customers.
Absolutely. I felt that if, say, a detailer came and he came to the show and there was a guy selling floor mats, or he could add something to the mix before he left the show. There was always something, windshield repair, hubcaps and wheels the first show. There was a ton of stuff. And I felt, well, that'll help their business. And in most cases, it did, because the next show they'd say, wow, I really got a lot of information and I was able to add this to my mix. And we tried to do a detail contest a couple of times, but it was really difficult. Just like the Dent Olympics. When we first started that, you had to make the dents with basically like a hammer and a golf ball at the end of a screwdriver. So they're not all perfect, but there was really no one moaning about it because it was a contest and it was fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's what's great about it. And there's some of those, I'll call them bridging companies, right? So you get the PDR side, you get the detailing side, but then in the center, you get the companies like Dr. Color Chip, who's been there year after year, and the paint sprayers and all of that, because now that's starting to come together.
Yes.
You know, a lot of times the detailing guys and gals didn't want to see anything to do with paint, but now there's a lot of them that are spraying ceramic coatings. So the Billis and the paint gun people, that's all in there. And I think that is kind of bringing us together. We were kind of lamenting about the early days when we were looking at those pictures. The early days of this, it was kind of out of control. I mean, we not the show itself, but the after parties and the people themselves. It was kind of this crazy ass dent wizard. I mean, the guy in his underwear taking pictures in the hall. Jody and I mean, honestly, now probably the statute of limitations is over on this, but Jody and I used to get a hotel, a really cheap, just dirtbag hotel across the street. And then at night, we would just put on our swimming suits and our towels and we'd walk across and we just go in like we own the place. We're here, you know. So we just go in and do all that. But I think that the thing about that is that kind of helped build that foundational, like when you mention some of these guys, you know who they are. You know, you're like, oh, that's Price, or that's, you know, the guy from Dr. Color Chip has been there 100 years. Speaking of somebody else has been there forever, happy birthday to our friend Chris West, who's been at these shows forever.
Yep, definitely. Chris is an icon.
Yeah.
It's funny though, you're absolutely right, because we did the show in Clearwater and we did a number of shows in Clearwater. But this one, the guy comes in the next morning, he says, yeah, it was a rough night last night. And I said, oh, you're out drinking. And he says, no. He said, it was hard getting to sleep. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, a bunch of us rented a room. And it was over at the Palm Pavilion, which really wasn't a big hotel. It was like 2 stories, a little.
Yeah.
He takes a picture and shows it to me. I couldn't stop laughing. There was guys sleeping under the sink, on top of the sink, one in the bathtub, one laying between the bathtub and the door. The beds on each side of the bed, it was absolutely packed. They were all drunk from the night before. I said, well, do you know who's in there? He said, I don't have any idea, but I got my stuff and left.
Yep. Oh yeah. I remember one of those right across the street there where the bathtub was full of ice and beer. And it was just it was a different thing. The show was still the show. It was still a professional show. We met a lot of people. There's connections that I've made in those first years that we still have today.
Yeah.
And I think that is, we still to this day go back to the show because it is a coming together of people, and it's, you're going to see some of the same people, but the participants are always new.
Right.
And I think that's what makes it good. The SEMA show, it's too big.
You're lost in the next,
and there's different things people are there to do. So the Mobile Tech Expos and the smaller shows like that have always been around, but that is, we're trying to think of any other thing in the industry that's been around that long, and besides us, old guys, there's not a lot that's been around. So you've had how many years? Because I remember seeing your daughter and then your grandson running around.
Yeah, it's about 22, 23 years.
That's huge.
We started it. I mean, there was a company called ATA, Auto Trim Accessories, that I started going to in the beginning, and I tried to get things, and I was exhibiting because we were manufacturing the car parts. I was trying to see, and then I went to SEMA. We did the SEMA show a couple of years, and I thought there's got to be something that these guys, want the exhibitors now want to come to the show because they feel welcome, not the union jumping all over them because the wheels went over the line, whatever.
Yeah.
And that was a big issue for me. And so I made sure that we're union friendly wherever we went. We took care of the union before, and I was known as Staples for a while there because we gave everybody staples and cards for their leads.
Yep.
Remember that?
Yeah, we still have them
in there. We got them. So yeah, absolutely.
I still have that, and I have a little pocket knife you gave us.
That's right.
Yeah.
I felt that we want you to come back. We want it to be a family affair. We want it to be really an experience for both, for exhibitors, for attendees, and for their families. I think we were the first show to allow children on the floor. And I had a fight with them over it at the insurance company, but I said, no, that's not an option. We want the children there, because in reality, if you're starting a business, I don't care what age they were, but if you're starting a business, the child's going to wind up working in the business or helping you or wanting to help you.
Yes.
And so this was a way we had at the Doubletree, we had a massive area, a children's area. We had games and toys and color books and all sorts of stuff. And the guard that was at the door was taking a lunch break. And he said, would you mind if I sit in the corner of the children's area? I said, no, go right ahead. Well, turns out somebody comes to me at the other end of the show and they said, that guy said, yeah, he's Hawaiian. He said, is he really Hawaiian? I said, yeah, he's from Hawaii. And he goes, well, he speaks Yiddish. He spoke Yiddish. I said, well, how do you know? He said, I had a conversation with him the past 20 minutes. We're talking. He's talking Yiddish to me. I'm like, oh, but there were things like that. Things that happen. I probably should write some of it all down.
I love that. And I think too, back, when Rod and I went for the very first time in 2008, we were a complete anomaly. I mean, people would come up to our booth and they're like, what are you selling? What do you have? What software? Why do I need software for my business, dude? I'm doing just fine with my clipboard and my paper.
Right.
And so it's been kind of fun, for Rod and I to think about the past 14 years of us being a part of trying to build an aspect of the industry that I think a lot of people weren't really aware of. And that's kind of what software brought to the table. It's like, look, you guys have the skills, whether it's PDR or detailing or anything like that, but you also need to be business owners. And Rod and I have really tried to, from the very beginning to go, hey guys, there's more to running your business than just, doing the skills. There's customer service, there's the daily management, there's the invoicing, the bookkeeping, and a lot of times that gets overlooked, right? And it's been fun to see, the evolution of the industry become more business focused instead of craft focused.
Yeah. And one of the big things for Jody and I is one of those years in that picture before I lost my eyesight and my goatee, we walked in the show, and this was a pretty pivotal moment for Jody and I, because this was all, we bootstrapped our whole thing like you. We just came in and decided to start this business. And we walked into the Mobile Tech Expo and somebody walked past us and goes, oh, there's the RoadFS guys. And we went,
yeah,
those guys recognized us. Those guys actually recognized who we were. And it was a big thing for us because, we're not like that at all. We don't, we're just some schmucks from Idaho who build software, but to see somebody that recognized us from the years prior and have people come up to us. We've had people come to us at the show that have said, hey, I wanted to come to the show specifically to see you guys. And I think that's what's great about it, is that we can all convene together. There's a lot of camaraderie. You can go out and eat and drink and have fun with your friends that you're on the other side of the world sometimes.
Yep.
And then, then you come together in the evenings, you go to the show. There's so much stuff that happens between the vendors,
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's kind of the unspoken benefit of the shows is the participants are awesome. The show's always packed. You open those doors and it's just a flood of people. but it's also the vendors and the things that you do with the vendors. You become partners, you become friends, you become allies with all of these people that are there. And that's always, the key to me when I saw that the show was a very successful show is when you guys open up and say, okay, now we're open for you to book next year's booth, and the people that just flood over there, and so it's something I think that, I don't know if did you have any idea that it was going to be like this when you started it? Was this your dream, or is this just kind of an anomaly?
I think it was basically a dream, because as I said, I've been to all the different shows, like glass shows, body shop shows, NACE, SEMA, and it bothered me that, between all the Russian jumble all over the place, that you were really a nobody, and you rented this booth. It cost you a fortune. You paid the union top dollar, and then you stood there and you'd hope somebody would come to your booth, but you didn't talk to your neighbor, or they wouldn't talk to you. And I found that I wanted it to be a friendly show where everybody enjoyed it. After the show, you go to get something to eat together, or just became friends. And that was my main intention. I didn't want it to be very rigid. I mean, SEMA show, when we did it, it was, well, I'll give you an example. We had a booth right next to the service counter. It was a draped area, and it was a service counter for, can't even think of the name of the decorator. But there was a girl there, and every morning I'd come in and I'd bring her a cup of coffee. And so I'm there for like almost a week. And the last day of the show, she hands me a second day air envelope. And I'm thinking, oh, okay. And it was something from a guy in Michigan that asked if I would put it in the booth. It was just like a page. So I had a plastic holder, and I put it up in the booth. Well, it was 2 days before it show's closing, and I get a bill for $150. Well, I already paid the bill. What's this? Well, it was the freight. I said, well, what freight? And she said, well, I handed you that envelope. Like, you got to be kidding me.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I didn't care for. So the unions I was really particular about. We went with Breed when we started to grow, and Frank Minish was the manager for all the union problems and issues. And of course, Frank and I became like this, which really helped. And the same thing in Clearwater. I got very friendly with them there. And there's no need to be, antagonistic or at each other's throats. It doesn't make any sense. No one's going to win from it.
No. And I think that's the one of the things that I look back at when I'm thinking about all the years that we've gone there is literally the relationships we've made with people. We've got Richard Hutchings from Leather Repair Companies watching our podcast right now, making comments, and we love Richard. Richard has become one of our best friends, and that would have happened without hi Richard. That would never have happened without these shows. And so I feel like that's one of the things, the greatest things and I can think back to some of the people that we met years and years, Bob Rossman and just the Ed Twilliger and some of the big names in the things. One of the pictures I looked back at, there's a picture that in Florida, Rennie Doyle won a Lifetime Achievement Award at MTE years and years and years ago. I want to say it was 2016, 2017.
Yeah, he's the one.
Anyway, and I don't know what happened, but he pulled me up on stage. So there's this picture of me and Rennie with him having the award. And to this day, I look at it and I'm like, why in the hell was I on the stage? I didn't do anything. But, but it was a great opportunity to meet people and be there. And I think that the industry as a whole needs that kind of coming together. There's things that we've picked up that we've partnered with people and done, with Richard and Bob. We started a new group called the Detailers of the Round Table. I
saw that. Yeah.
About the positivity and doing that. And I think that is the greatest part about it, being involved in that and trying to get people to come in. The young kids that come in, you meet at the show and they're I'm just starting my business. I'm 23 years old. What do I do? And that kind of stuff. That's the greatest part of that is helping somebody else achieve their goals. And I think,
but you didn't, when you just said that, that's exactly what we wanted to do. We wanted the guys to come in who were new, just starting out, and the experienced guys to, gather around, everybody come together. And that definitely worked. And it worked in each segment of it. detailing, PDR, everything. And that was a big plus. And it's that way to this day. I mean, you can go into the show and go over to a competitor and talk to them and not have issues. I'll tell you a quick story. There was a gentleman, he's still alive, Paul Peretta, who was a PDR tech, nicest guy you ever met. And he's in Tampa. He's really close. And woke up one morning, he was paralyzed.
Oh,
don't
man.
Don't want to get emotional, but he was totally paralyzed from the neck down. And it was terrible. But he had a route that he would do every day, PDR route, different dealerships and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, what happened, I didn't even get involved. What happened was one of the techs decided, you know what, we need to help Paul. So each guy took a different day of the week off of his route. And
yeah,
Wow.
that's phenomenal. I
wow.
think that's the kind of camaraderie and the things people need. I know that we've been at Mobile Tech Expo and the Rag Company, which is a big company and they have a lot of resources. They were supposed to do an event with a guy's car and they didn't have anything. They had nothing. And by the time they walked around MTE, they had picked up polishers and product. And they were able to go and do this thing that was of no benefit to the people that helped them. And that's what I think is the greatest part about that is you can find things and people that you connect with and you go in and you make it's a business decision, but it ends up enriching your whole life and doing things. And so I think that is, we look forward to going every single year. We have a lot of fun, and people ask us, they're like, oh, do you make a lot of money on the shows? There's one of the
Yeah.
And I say it doesn't matter if we talk to one person and we help them out. There you go. And I think that's the key to it is just it is part of our lives that we can go in and we can you can share those moments. And the IDA is a big supporter of that, and we have our meeting every year at Tech Expo. We sit down and we discuss the upcoming events, and sometimes that's the only face-to-face we have with someone from that organization, and so that's a connection point that we can make all the time in there.
When we started the show, it was important for me to get detailers to come to the show. So there was a group called the PDTA, Professional Detailers Technicians Association. The gentleman was from England. His name was Graham. Unfortunately, he passed, but it then just moved, and a big influence then became Bud Abraham from Detail Plus.
Yep.
Yeah.
The shows. And that was important. When it got to the point where IDA started, I thought this is great because we're really well organized. And it did. I mean, without it, I think the industry wouldn't be where it is without the IDA. There's no question in my mind.
Yeah.
And it definitely helped.
I think one of the things too, it's like, I'm sure early on when you were trying to pull the detailers in, you kind of had the detractors that were saying, you know what, this isn't really for us. And, so why should I value this time or whatever? And I appreciate that you stuck with the vision of bringing everybody together because it's easy to get trapped in the negativity. It's easy to go, this isn't working for me right now, instead of tapping into the vision of what can be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, as I look back, that's really what you've accomplished is what can be and what can still be developed if we all lean into the industry and become professional and supportive, and we all work to elevate each other in the industry because there's enough room for all of us to play.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yep.
There's no question. I mean, the different alliances within the groups really weren't, my idea was there's no politics. I don't care. I don't want to even know it. And I think that worked all the way down to everyone. They wound up that, we do have to get together. We have to deal with things. But when we did the first detail contest, it was in in Corpus Christi. And what we did was we took panels off of cars, we painted them, and then you would scratch it or whatever. And of course, from the get-go, it was, well, my car must have been on the right side, so it got more sun. My car must have had paint before. And by the end of it, I thought, why am I doing it? And I tried to sit down with guys to ask them, and they couldn't give me an answer. I said, if I buy steel plating and paint it, would it be the same? No, well, each one's going to take the spray gun different than and that's when I said, well, it's difficult.
Yeah, it is. And I think that some people they go a little too deep with it. I think people need to just kind of step back from their own egos. And that's really hard in the detailing industry specifically, because there's a lot of ego involved in it, arguably on purpose, because you really want that car to look good. And so, but if people take the opportunity, I've had people that we've had a conflict with for no reason. We have no idea what it is, social media, whatever, but we've actually settled that at the shows, because you're face to face with somebody. And I think that's a lot of, there's people have tons of ideas. I mean, we see it all the time. We'll sit on committees or you go to groups and everybody's got an idea. And sometimes it's just, it's just overwhelming, the ideas people have. But the key to that is trying to kind of step back from yourself a little bit. And again, the whole goal of that is to help out the people that are going to that show and want to see products, and maybe they've never even heard of you before. They might not even know there's software available, or that there's this new tire shine, or that leather conditioner that Richard comes up with, and that's the beauty of going there. You connect people together. I've introduced people before. I've actually walked a customer over to one of our competitors, because I knew that they did a certain aspect better than us. And I walked over to him and said, hey, this is so-and-so, he needs this, and I know you guys do that better. And they just looked dumbfounded, like,
yeah,
did you do that? And I'm like, well, if he uses ours and it doesn't work as good, he's going to come back to you eventually. And I've had the same thing happen, Dustin.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Then that guy will be more open to giving you a customer, and then it grows. It's funny you mentioned Richard. Hi, Richard. We did a show in the UK for two years, and I sent Richard, and I had to mail it from here, so you can imagine. I sent him stuff like you wouldn't believe, thinking, okay, great, we've got a leather company in to recolor and stuff. And I got the impression he was going to come, but he never came. So then when he shows up here, and I said, why didn't you come? He said, I didn't think it was going to be that good.
There's Richard. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
That's Richard.
It turns out that they were really good shows. We did them in, I hate to say it, but Manchester United's cricket ground. So I'm a Liverpool supporter. So that's like, I walked around at night. I didn't want anybody to see me.
There you go.
That's funny.
But we did it there, and it turned out to be a really good show. In Europe, you don't rent like booth packages. They take a floor and you tape the floor where the booths are, and people come into those and they display whatever they want in that area. So it was a little bit different for me, but it was successful, and I thought, wow, we can do this. Then it got to the point where, I was having issues with my health, and I thought, well, I was born in Canada. My parents were British subjects. And so I moved back to England when I was about, I don't know, probably under a year. And I grew up in a town called Runcorn, which is up towards the northwest, close between Wales, and then Liverpool's across the Mersey. And I grew up there, and I came back not came back, but when there was a school holiday, I would come back to the States. So my mother had a 1964 Ford Fairlane with a fire engine red interior. And, I thought, well, I'm going to wax it for her. I think it was about 14. So I went to the store and I bought this wax, and I did the whole car. Well, one half of the car, bumper to bumper. And then I tried to buff it off. It was Simonized. And when Simonized was like rock, rock, you can't get it off. I spent an hour and I got about that much off the hood. Needless to say, I figured, well, I'm not going to be doing this anymore. I don't want to know about it. But there was a car wash called Simonized on Queens Boulevard, and my mother took it there, and they charged her $19.99 to take it off. And I thought, well, that wasn't a bad deal.
Yeah.
That was my first experience with detailing.
Yeah.
But then I had cars, and I love to do my own cars. So
yeah, and I think there's a lot of people. We've actually talked to so many people that there's either that aspect, somebody that loved cars and that's why they're into it, or there's somebody that wanted to create a business where they were more in control of their own time and destiny and everything. And I think that in general in the automotive world, that's something that's really opened up in the last 20 years and allowed people to do that. I mean, prior to this, it was you had to go to a shop that somebody owned and you had to work for them, or you had to have $1 million to build a shop and do
yes,
that. And now you don't have to do that. I mean, that's where I started out in the late 80s, working in shops and restoring cars and stuff. And I think that it's changed a lot. And I'm glad to see that. I like to see the evolution of it, and where we can
yeah,
go, move
yeah,
and pivot. And I think that's the key to, like you're doing with the shows, you have to pivot. Sometimes we've had it in venues and there was the outside tents and there used to be the car show, which I loved the car show aspect of it. But then you go to a different venue and there's a different vibe and it's a different
yeah.
show. And I think that's what's fun to watch happen, because so many times we go to different shows. There's some here in town, there's local shows that people have, and it's the same thing every single year and they don't change it up, but it always changes and we have new things every year.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's super fun. I mean, it's been fun to look back, on our own personal journey with you and Mobile Tech Expo, and the direct impact and indirect impact that you and your vision has had on our business and our relationships. Looking back, what have you learned through the process that you think would be helpful for business owners as they're building their business?
Well, I don't. I really wouldn't care what business it was, from PDR, detailing, paint touch up, or whatever. You have to be honest. You can't, basically just walk away from it and say, "Oh yeah, here it is. Here's my bill." And then when the customer comes out and looks at it and says, "Oh geez, what did you do?" You've got to be honest. If you mess it up, you got to take the hit. If it's got to be repainted, the fender or whatever you did, it's got to be repainted. And I think that was really important to me, because there were a lot of guys that were doing things that, I felt were really out of line. Matter of fact, there was one individual who was doing interior repairs. I remember back in the day with people smoking pot and stuff, and those velour seats and the land and like millions of, little burn holes. Well, I'm not going to mention any names, but there was a guy that decided, well, we can make a lot of money doing this. What we're going to do is you get a good rapport with the manager, buy him a steak dinner or whatever, and then go into the place. And he sold a set of felt tip pens, water-based pens. So he would go into the car, put all these dots, right? Once you had that relationship with a guy who trusted you, yeah, here's the keys. Go see what I have on the lot.
Right.
And he would go in and do that. And the guy would say, "Oh, yeah." He'd lock the car back up and say, "Oh, no, I think I left the keys in the office." So the guy couldn't open the door. And he'd look and he'd see there all. And he'd say, "Oh, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, that's got to be fixed. I can't sell this like that." Then he'd go out there with a spray bottle of water, spray it, and wipe it all down.
Oh, man.
And that's what was hurting the industry.
Yeah.
We didn't need that. It was hard enough to get guys to have like a professional business without these hacks going around. And that was a big issue for me, and I'm to this day, if you can't be honest, don't do it. It doesn't pay.
Yeah. You got to have integrity in business. And I think that's one of the things that somebody that doesn't have integrity, if they go to these shows, they're going to see all these other people, and that's got to weigh heavily on them. That there's people out there doing it the right way, and I think that's the thing, is there's something for everybody. I learned something at every event, every show, everywhere we go. I just try to absorb something, even if I pick up one thing, it's going to help enrich what we're already doing.
Right.
And there's people out there that have more money, there's people out there that have more employees, but we don't try to get caught up in that. And for us, it's just a matter of taking our business and keep going in a direction. I mean, hey, when you've been in business for 15 years, you got to be doing something right to keep going. When you've got a show that's been around for 20 years, there's something you're doing right. So we really appreciate the ability to do it, and basically the ability to have you accessible You're always accessible at those shows. People can walk around, ask you questions, give you feedback. I'm sure you've heard so much feedback you don't want to hear it anymore. But at least that there's a place you can go and you can talk to all the people. There's so many shows you don't ever see anybody, and it's just you pay your money, you go in, and you're like, I don't even know what the routine's like. So that's something that I really appreciate about you and the Mobile Tech Expo in general.
I mean, that was, as you say, that was really important to me. I didn't want it to be like you go to SEMA and they're up in an office where you never get to talk to anybody and they send people down to deal with you. I wanted it to be the way it was. And I felt that with my discussions with Chuck, it would be. And of course, now we have Sheldon as a show manager, and he's as accessible as I am. And that really makes a difference.
Yeah, both Sheldon and Wheels are absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
They've done a good job of picking up where you brought them to. And Rod and I, we love the show. It's been such a key part of our business, and so we want to personally thank you for being such a phenomenal ambassador for the industry, for creating such an amazing opportunity for everybody, and being a leader in the industry.
Thank you.
You really have. And we just want to thank you for your time today and for your investment for the last 20 plus years.
Right,
That's amazing. So
we look forward to it in January, February this year again.
Yep. I'm probably going to be out in Vegas next month for the dent trials that they're doing.
Awesome.
So I'm probably going to be there. Not positive, but I'll definitely be at MTE for sure.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Guys that are tapped in, thank you for joining us every week. I mean, we really, really appreciate it. Please go out to YouTube, to Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Please give us a review, a thumbs up. It helps us get the podcast out to more people, and we really, really appreciate it. So,
and we will see you guys all next week with another bunch
of
of whatever.
Detailers of the roundtable next week.
Detailers of the roundtable to talk about what that is. A lot of people have questions, so we will see you all next week. Thanks a lot.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so